Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jess and today I thought I would talk about all of the books that I read in November. So this was actually a really weird month for me. I kind of got into a real reading slump like halfway through. So a lot of these books are either from like the very beginning or the very end of November, because in the middle I just hardly read it all, which is really sad. And for some reason, the book that started it off, I didn't expect to be the cause of a reading slump, but I'll tell you when I get to it. So let's get right into the video. So the first book that I read in the month was Vicious by J Shen. And Vicious is the name of the main character. And when he's younger, like when he's a teenager, his family hire this cleaner, and the cleaner's daughter is Amelia. She comes to live with him and she's about the same age. So you've got Vicious and Amelia, they're both teenagers and they're both living in the same house, but they hate each other because he's really horrible to her, like from the offset. And so there's a lot of tension, and you see all this through flashbacks. So the book is actually set 10 years later when they're both adults. He's like a brilliant lawyer now. She's an artist, she likes to paint, and she actually ends up working for him, being like the secretary. So there's a bit of like boss employee dynamic there as well. So we're watching them in present day, and obviously they're still feeling like the same hatred that they felt when they were younger, and then we're flashing back to when they had those months like living together in the same house, because he was pretty horrible then as well. And I guess there was also her being like the daughter of the cleaner and him being the man of the house. And then you slowly watch in present day as they get to know more about each other, and he's got a whole like group of friends, part of a series called the Sinners of Saints series, and each book in the series follows a different guy in the friendship group. But I actually don't know if I'm going to carry on reading the rest of the books in this, because I'd heard a lot of good things about it and then it just didn't grip me. Like, it wasn't awful, but I was like, I could kind of give or take this. I wasn't really fussed. So I kind of started off the month in a bit of a like, mood. I normally like romances like this as well, where it's a bit of a bully romance almost, or like the characters just really don't get on. Like the guy's horrible and then he ends up really falling for the girl, and it's that I hate everyone in the world but you kind of trope. But yeah, this one just didn't live up to my expectations really. And I've also read Pretty Reckless, which is part of the All Saints High series. It's basically the children of the first series, if that makes sense. I read it first, so I read it kind of the wrong way around. But I also like wasn't fussed with that. I don't know now if it's maybe just J Shen's writing. I don't know. I'll try a few more probably just to see. But it's weird the fact that I had the same experience with the first book in that series as well. So yeah, that was Vicious. Next, I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So if you don't know, Taylor Jenkins Reid also wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. All of those have become like really popular all at the same time, especially on BookTok. And so I've read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and I really enjoyed that. I haven't read Daisy Jones and the Six, but I'm definitely going to read that this month. I'm going to make that a goal. So in this book, we follow the Reaver family, and Nina Reaver is the main character. She's like this supermodel, famous surfer, everyone knows her. Every year she holds an end of summer party and literally everyone's invited in Hollywood. Famous TV, movie people just turn up uninvited. It's literally like the party of the year. If you're anyone of note, then you'll be there kind of vibe. So the story is kind of talking about the Reaver family and their childhood growing up, and it's all leading up until this one party where everything like culminates. So in the family there's 4 siblings, they're all famous. Nina's the main one, then there's the 2 brothers Jay and Hood. One's a surfer, one's a photographer, and then there's the baby sister called Kit. And they're all the children of this really famous singer called Mick Reaver. But as you learn more about their childhood, you realise that actually it wasn't great growing up. It's just really interesting reading about like all the family. I just feel like Taylor Jenkins Reid captures how the character's feeling, like the frustration, especially of Nina, all the things she has to do growing up. She just captures it really well. You really feel for the character. Like, I really grew to like love Nina as a person. And then yeah, it all ends in this big party. There's like scandals. There's different characters and they're all like interweaving because you found out about them separately, and then they all end up at this party at the end. The craziest party you've ever imagined. And then they're trying to sort out family stuff at the same time. Nina's got her divorce going on, stuff with their dad, just like one big mess. The 2 brothers are like arguing. None of that really gives it away because you don't know all the reasons why, because it's really complex. I really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more than Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but it is a close one. I just really enjoyed when it got to the party as well. Like, I was like turning the pages like so fast, like trying to get through because so much is happening. But one of my best friends who also reads and read them both together basically like the same time as me, she had the opposite opinion. She liked Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo more. It definitely lived up to expectations for me anyway. Next, I read Beetry by Emily Henry, and this was the one that actually ended me up in the reading slump. I don't know why, because I was really looking forward to it, heard a lot about it, and it wasn't a bad book. The first half of the book I was really enjoying, and then I can't remember why I stopped for a few days. I was like busy, and then I just couldn't get back into it afterwards. So it's really weird because I had been really enjoying it, and then I just couldn't get through the last half. It was just feeling quite slow, and it wasn't gripping me, and I was like, this is so weird, because I enjoyed the first half, like read it really quick. But anyway, I'll tell you what it's about. So it's about two writers, a girl called January and a guy called Augustus, and they knew each other back at college or uni. And then, this isn't a spoiler because this happens really early on, but basically January's just lost her dad. Her dad left her a beach house, so she decides to go and stay there over the summer while she's writing her next novel. And coincidentally, Gus lives in the beach house next door, and they haven't seen each other in like years, so they both had relationships or marriages in between, and they also really didn't get on back at college or uni. They used to really hate each other. They keep bumping into each other, and when they get talking, Gus seems to be really negative about the type of novels that January writes. So she writes about like romance, love, and she feels like he's putting it down. She basically says to him, it's not as easy to write this sort of thing as you would think. So they agree to write a novel in like the style of the other person, if that makes sense. So basically Gus is going to write a romance novel, and then January's going to write like a mystery crime sort of book. And then they agree that they're gonna go on outings to like teach each other how to write the other genre. And there's also stuff going on with like January's family. It does get a bit emotional in places. So it had a lot going on, and I did really enjoy the premise of the book, because obviously I like reading books, so I like reading about authors and people writing books as well. But yeah, I just got a bit bored in the second half. For a few weeks after that, I just couldn't get back into it, so I didn't carry on reading. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing really, but it could have just been the mood I was in, I suppose. Now I'll carry on and talk about the book that got me out of the reading slump. So next I read Archer's Voice. I loved this book so much. So basically in the book we follow a girl called Bree, and something terrible's happened at home, and she basically decides she just needs to get away for a while. She goes and travels to this sleepy little town where not much goes on. She rents herself a little house, she gets herself a job working in a nearby diner, just living this quiet like day-to-day life, trying to get over like the horrible things that have just happened to her like a few months ago. And then she bumps into this guy in town who just seems really weird, like he doesn't really speak to her when she tries to like apologise for bumping into him. She ends up asking around a little bit about who he is. She asks her neighbour. Her neighbour says this guy's called Archer. He's like the town loner. No one speaks to him, no one interacts with him. She just paints him out to be this really weird guy that Bree should avoid. And then one day, so Bree's got this little dog, they're heading down to this little cove, and as she's walking down the lane she realises that she's walking past Archer's house, and she just gets really curious. She like stops for a second to have a bit of a nose. Her dog ends up running through the gates of his house, so she has to chase after her dog. That's how she ends up like on his property. So obviously they like have an interaction then, and that's how she gets to start to know him. And there's another aspect to it which I really liked as well, but I won't talk about it because it spoils it a bit, that I just really liked and I hadn't read about before. Just made it like so much cuter, because character wise she's really bubbly, friendly, confident, and he's really like shy, awkward, doesn't know how to interact with girls. And then when she's making the effort to get to know him, he like slowly opens up to her, and it was just so beautiful. Really nice story. I just really loved it. And there's a few times that like really made my heart go. I was like, oh god, no, don't let that happen. It was a journey. Such a good one to read after I hadn't read for a few weeks. Get me back into the swing of things. The only thing I would say is like one dramatic thing happens at the end, and I was like, whoa, okay, like I feel like we didn't need that. The story had kind of finished and I was happy with how it had ended, and so that's why it like wasn't quite a 5 stars, but it was still really good, and I definitely recommend. Next I read Stepbrother, Dearest by Penelope Ward. So this book is about a girl called Greta, and her dad died when she was younger, so her mum has remarried this new man, and when she's about 17, his son comes to live with them. And basically, from the start, he is just horrible to her, partly because he just doesn't want to live there, he doesn't want to be there, he'd rather be living back with his mum, and he just enjoys tormenting her. He's really horrible, and he's called Ellic. So the first half of the book is them when they're younger, living in the same house but just not getting on, and then slowly he starts to warm to her a bit. So he's kind of like tormenting her, but in more of a jokey way, and they do start to form like a real connection. And then really abruptly he has to leave and go back and live with his mum, and then they don't see each other again, they don't speak to each other for like 7 years. And then we flash forward to the next part of the book, which is in present day, and basically they're forced back together again because of something to do with family. And I don't want to say too much else about it, but there's a few complications in the way in present day which are stopping them from like rekindling what they had before. You're really rooting for them, but there's a lot of stuff in the way that's stopping it. And also he just doesn't know how to deal with his emotions, so he starts off being really horrible again in present day, like even though he's 7 years old now and should be an adult, but he's just horrible. And I had the same experience with this as I did with Archer's Voice, where it was going like super well. In the last few pages the author just wrote about something where I was like, we really didn't need that. Hate when they flash forward at the end of the book telling us how the characters have got on, and unless that's done really well, that snapshot of in 5 years time, it feels just tagged on the end because we haven't seen like all the years in between. There was just a bit of that going on at the end, and I was like, just stop. This book was good. I would have been happy if it ended right there. You didn't need to carry on. But it was still good. I did really enjoy this one. And I did kind of think that I was going to enjoy it because I've read another Penelope Ward book, Room Hate, and I loved that book. I'm becoming a Penelope Ward fan. Next, I've got a bit of a different one, which is Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. This is a non-fiction book, and it's different to all the romance ones. Basically, the author, Matt Haig, talks about when he was younger, when he was in his 20s. He basically suffered like a breakdown. So he had depression and anxiety. I should probably say a trigger warning as well, but he touches on when he almost took his own life, and he talks about his experience with it, like a really honest and open description of how he was feeling. It goes into so much depth, I can't even describe this quickly. And in between this, he tells you little stories, little anecdotes, all the things that make him feel better. And he also talks about his experiences in present day because he's a lot older, he's got a family now, and I guess he's kind of saying how he really didn't expect to survive and to be where he is now, although he's still really open on his social media, and I follow him on Instagram, and he'll talk about times where he's going through his depression and anxiety again. And I think it's really refreshing because he's not telling this story like, oh, I used to suffer really badly and now I'm completely fine. This is something he struggles with all the time. I love this book so much, and I would literally recommend this to everyone because I would recommend it to people who do suffer with mental health struggles. It might help to read a book like this where you feel like you're not quite so by yourself and someone actually does understand what you've been feeling. And I would also recommend it to friends and family of people who struggle with mental health because it's such an insight into what someone can be feeling. And I feel like when you're in that place, it's so hard to describe other than saying, oh, I feel anxious, whereas this actually puts into words something you might not be able to explain properly. So I literally recommend it to everyone. On the back it says it's moving, funny and joyous. It's more than a memoir. It's a book about making the most of your time on earth. 5 out of 5 for this one, and I'm glad that I read it. Next, I read No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference by Greta Thunberg. I hope I've said her last name right. This is basically a collection of lots of different speeches that she's made at different like climate events. If you don't know who she is, she's a climate activist who started her activism journey when she was literally about 15, I think. She started Fridays for Future. She went on strike from school on a Friday and then carried it on every Friday since. And she went and sat outside the parliament buildings in her country. She's from Sweden. And it just gained more and more media attention. Then she started getting invited to all of these conferences and climate conventions. She started speaking at them almost as like the voice of the youth of today. It's just a really inspiring read. It's only really small. It didn't take very long to read. It's a bit of like self-promo. But I started up last year my own fashion brand. I sell sustainable loungewear and streetwear. And it just made me more inspired to like carry on doing that. Reading something like this, it just spurs you on. You read like her speeches and it just feels powerful, like as if you've heard her speaking just to you. So I'm glad I picked this one up. Next, we've got Dear Enemy by Kristen Callihan. And this is the book that I'm actually reading right now. I haven't actually finished it, but by the time I upload this video, I will have finished it, and I am quite far through. I thought I'd include it anyway. This book starts off and it's talking about the main girl, Delilah. She's got a sister called Sam, but they're complete opposites. And when they're at school together, there's this guy called Macon, which I've never heard that name before, and I just keep thinking of bacon every time I hear it. Well, hear it, I mean like when I say it in my own head when I'm reading, which is a weird thought. Yeah, when they're at school, Sam basically starts a relationship with Macon. Macon is just horrible to Delilah for some reason. He's lovely to the one sister and horrible to the other, and Delilah like hates him with a passion. Eventually, Sam and Macon end up breaking up. This isn't a spoiler because it happens really quickly. It's just kind of giving you the background to the two sisters and their relationship with him. Not long after Sam and Macon have broken up, they all finish high school, head off their separate ways, like the sisters move away. Now we're following them years later. Macon is now a professional actor and he's really famous. Suddenly gets in touch with Delilah and says, do you know where Sam is? She's stolen a watch from me. And basically Sam couldn't be more different from Delilah. She'll do the most reckless things. She'll disappear for weeks, months on end. Delilah has no idea where she is. And this time she's stolen this watch from Macon and just disappeared. So as a compromise, because Delilah doesn't want her sister to be arrested, she offers to Macon that she will be his cleaner, assistant, chef, everything for the foreseeable future until they can hopefully find Sam and get the watch back, because she's got no money to give him, so this is the only way that she can try and pay him back on her sister's behalf. So they've hated each other ever since school, and now they're having to live together in the same house, and it definitely gave me Wall of Winnipeg vibes. Not quite as slow burn, and I haven't actually finished it, so I don't know what's going to happen towards the end, but so far it's heading in a good direction. I'm enjoying reading it, and if you like forced proximity trope, there's that as well. So it's got a lot of different things in there that I enjoy in a book, and I can't imagine that there's going to be anything drastic that happens that's going to make me hate it, so I've got a good feeling about finishing this one. So that was all the books that I read this month, just in time because the lighting is starting to go. It's literally not even 4 yet, and it's getting dark. Like, what is this? I literally hate the winter months because of this. But anyway, so I didn't get through quite as many as I normally do, but I feel like I'm back on a roll now. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope that maybe it gave you a few more recommendations to read. Some a bit different as well, not all romance, even though it's my favourite. Let me know if you've read any of them or if you've got any recommendations that are similar to these. And I'm going to be posting more about what I think about different books on my Instagram, which is a new account, so I will link it below. I might start doing some polls on what I should read next, so it'd be good to get like some of your guys' opinions. But yeah, I hope you're having a lovely week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!